A young sea monster emerges from the sea and finds himself in a city where humans fear and hunt his kind, believing them to be dangerous creatures. He must fight the hunters in order to survive. Set in a small fishing town named Portorosso on the Italian coast, stories circulate about sea monsters, and generations of fishermen hunt these humanoid sea creatures. Luca, a young sea monster who assists his mother by herding fish, dreams of exploring the human civilization. However, his mother has always forbidden him from interacting with humans. Despite this, Luca secretly searches for lost human objects during his tasks. One day, while exploring sea crevices, he's discovered by a diver named Alberto, who turns out to be another sea monster like him. Alberto reveals his true identity, and the two sea monsters connect. Alberto demonstrates the ability to transform into a human when out of the water, surprising Luca, who had no idea that such a transformation was possible. After an initial shock, Luca tries to dismiss the experience and return to the water. However, he spends the night contemplating this newfound revelation. The next morning, Luca musters the courage to leave the water on his own. With Alberto's guidance, he learns to navigate gravity and stand upright, marking his first experience of being on land as a sea monster. On land, Alberto informs Luca that his father is away, leaving them alone. Alberto introduces Luca to various human things, but Luca becomes enamored with a pamphlet featuring a Vespa scooter, their dream vehicle. Lacking the funds to purchase one, they decide to construct their own scooter using discarded ocean materials. After hours of work, they create a beautiful scooter. Luca stays on land for too long and rushes home to avoid suspicion. His mother questions his whereabouts, but his grandmother covers for him, saying he was gathering sea cucumbers. The next day, Luca and Alberto test their homemade scooter. However, it falls apart as Alberto rides it down a hill, and he ends up in the water. Undeterred by their failure, the boys spend more time on land refining their scooter design. They create another scooter and decide to ride down the hill together using a turtle as a ramp support. They almost crash into rocks, prompting Luca's parents to become suspicious of his extended absences. Discovering that Luca is spending time on the surface, his parents plan to send him to live with his uncle in the abyssal sea. Refusing to go, Luca seeks out Alberto on an island to discuss the situation. They decide to run away to Portorosso, using a wrecked boat to reach the city. In town, they inadvertently bump into a couple of fishermen with hooks and fish, triggering Luca's anxiety. Alberto helps calm him down. Later, they approach a scooter owner but are interrupted when a group of children asks them to kick a ball. Luca's unfamiliarity with soccer leads to him accidentally kicking the scooter of an arrogant man named Urkel. After Urkel discovers that the boys were responsible for accidentally hitting his scooter, he starts bullying them. He nearly reveals Luca's true form by attempting to dunk his head in a fountain, but Julia intervenes just in time and saves him. She takes Luca and Alberto to safety on her bike. Luca asks Julia how to obtain a scooter, and she explains that Urkel earns money by winning the Portorosso Cup, a triathlon involving swimming, eating pasta, and cycling through the city. Julia expresses her determination to defeat Urkel, who has been winning the race multiple times. Luca suggests forming a team with Julia, and she agrees. With the team formed, Julia conducts tests to assign roles. Since the boys can't get wet, they pretend not to know how to swim, allowing Julia to take the swimming part. Luca takes on cycling, and Alberto handles the food competition. Julia takes them to her home, introducing them to her father, Massimo, a fisherman who hunts sea monsters. During dinner, a mishap leads to Alberto accidentally transforming in front of Massimo, revealing their true nature as sea monsters. Despite this, Massimo is unaware of their true identities. Julia discusses forming the team and asks Massimo for money to register for the Portorosso Cup. However, Massimo explains he's been struggling to catch fish recently and can't provide financial help. Luca and Alberto offer to assist with fishing due to their extensive knowledge of marine life in the region. The next morning, while Julia practices cycling, the boys go fishing with Massimo, providing tips on finding fish. After a successful fishing trip, Luca, Alberto, and Julia rush to register for the cup. Unfortunately, Urkel arrives with his friends Guido and Sixio, stealing their money for the registration fee. Alberto challenges Urkel to a fight, while Julia and Luca provoke him by mocking his ridiculous mustache. Challenged by Luca and the trio's determination, Urkel reluctantly returns the money to Luca, and they apply for the Portorosso Cup. As they begin practicing, Julia practices swimming while Urkel attempts to sabotage their practice by speeding towards their boat. Guido manages to avoid a collision, but the splash wets Alberto's face, causing him to transform into his sea monster form. Julia confronts Urkel, while Luca tries to cover Alberto with a towel. Unfortunately, in his haste, Luca accidentally drops Alberto into the water, revealing his sea monster tail to Urkel. The trio's practice is interrupted as Luca's parents arrive in Portorosso looking for him. A game of football leads to the children being knocked into the fountain, avoiding being discovered. The boys eventually return to Giulia's house, where Luca overhears his mother's laughter in the square. Fearing being found and taken to the abyss, Luca starts to explain what he saw to Giulia. They talk about school and astronomy, and Giulia takes Luca to observe the solar system and stars through her telescope. Giulia shows her books to Luca, and he becomes fascinated with knowledge. He expresses his excitement and desire to go to school to study. Luca borrows an astronomy book, but Giulia decides to gift it to him. Alberto returns, feeling jealous of Luca and Giulia's closeness. He calls Luca for a walk, and they explore the city. During their walk, they reach a scooter dealership where Luca's dream scooter is on display. Luca shares his newfound knowledge about stars being massive balls of fire, not anchovies as they had once thought. However, Alberto dismisses Luca's insights and shifts the conversation to his desire for the scooter. Luca expresses that school might be cooler than a motorcycle, but Alberto discourages him by claiming that he'll never be accepted at school once his fish side is revealed. Urkel arrives, throwing a harpoon at the boys. He orders his henchmen, Guido and Sixio, to hold Alberto while he attacks him. Luca intervenes, taking the harpoon and threatening them to release his friend. The trio escapes back to Giulia's house and takes refuge there. In the following days, the friends continue training and improving their skills. Luca becomes more adept at cycling uphill and carrying heavy loads effortlessly. However, Luca and Giulia spend more time together, studying various subjects like zoology and astronomy. Alberto starts feeling increasingly left out and extremely jealous. 2 days before the triathlon, Luca takes Alberto and Giulia for training. While passing through the square, Luca's parents are there, so he takes a shortcut to avoid them and reaches the top of a hill. Giulia shows them a train that leads to her school in Genoa. Alberto reacts angrily to the idea of Luca leaving and interrupts the conversation. Alberto encourages Luca to descend the steep hill. Giulia tries to reassure him, but Alberto impulsively takes control of the bike and races downhill at high speed, narrowly avoiding pedestrians and plunging into the sea. They swim to a deserted beach, and an argument ensues between Luca and Alberto, leading to tensions within the group. Giulia arrives, and Luca asks if he can attend school with her. Alberto, in a selfish move, reveals his true identity as a sea monster to Giulia, attempting to make her afraid of them. Luca pretends not to know anything and yells for help. Back home, Luca panics over Alberto's safety. Giulia tries to calm him down by throwing water on him, inadvertently discovering that he, too, is a sea monster. With Luca's dreams seemingly shattered, he swims to the island where he finds Alberto upset amidst the wreckage of a destroyed tower. Upon closer inspection, Luca notices marks on the wall that indicate the number of days Alberto's father had been away. Alberto has been alone on the island for years until Luca's arrival. Trying to uplift Alberto's spirits and salvage their scooter plan, Luca returns to town. The next morning, unable to get wet, Luca wears an old diving suit to race alone. Urkel cheats by smearing olive oil on Sixio to help him slide faster in the water at the race's start. Urkel gains an early lead, but the oil attracts anchovies that nibble on Sixio, slowing him down. Luca walks along the ocean floor with the diving suit, but its glass cracks due to pressure, causing water to leak in. Upon emerging from the water, Luca attempts to hide his sea monster form, but Urkel trips him and causes his helmet to fall. Despite this, Luca manages to conceal his appearance. During the pasta stage, Luca struggles with using a fork. Giulia, who is in first place, helps him out. Sixio finally reaches the beach while Guido takes his place in the pasta eating challenge. Urkel cheats again by stuffing all the pasta into his mouth at once. Luca moves on to the cycling portion, his strongest segment. Despite being behind and using an old bike, he quickly gains ground, reaching first place. However, rain starts to fall, and Luca, unable to get wet, hides under a cover, losing his lead to Urkel. Alberto arrives with an umbrella to help Luca, but Urkel kicks Alberto, revealing Alberto's true form as a sea monster. After discovering that Alberto is a sea monster, Urkel attempts to capture him with a net. Luca, seeing his friend in danger, leaves his hiding spot and reveals his sea monster form to save Alberto. They escape together on the bike, chased by Urkel. During the chase, Giulia intervenes by tackling Urkel, causing him to fall. As the boys stop to help Giulia, they are confronted by Massimo, who is armed with a harpoon. The townspeople surround them, including Urkel. However, Massimo recognizes Luca and Alberto and defends them, declaring them the winners of the race. The judge confirms their victory, even though Urkel protests. The hunters decide to leave them alone due to Massimo's presence. Luca's parents finally meet him, witnessing him being rewarded by humans. Luca and Alberto use the prize money to buy an old, beaten-up scooter. With humans and sea monsters living in harmony, peace returns to Portorosso. However, as the holidays end, Giulia must return to Geneva and school. At the train station, Luca and Alberto bid her farewell. Alberto reveals that he sold the scooter to buy a ticket to Geneva so that Luca can also study there. Luca's parents arrive, confirming that everything is arranged, and Luca will stay at Giulia's mother's house. Luca invites Alberto to join them, but Alberto decides to stay with Massimo and help him fish. Following an emotional farewell, Luca boards the train, heading to Geneva alongside Giulia to fulfill his dream of attending school together. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more interesting movies.